EAGLES, Eagles.
Welcome in, everybody. A Friday edition, a football Friday edition of Birds 365. Not a basketball Friday edition of Birds 365.
Ooh.
Johnny Mac, good Friday to you, sir. How are you?
Yeah, it's like, I don't know. What sequel are we on now? It's like the Fast and the Furious. How many Fast and the Furious have they made, Zander? I don't know, but
9 now, 8 or 9.
that's like the Sixers. See, they're just the same thing over and over and over again. I don't know. People, people buy into it, and they've already convinced themselves. Not everybody. There's more people getting understanding what's going on a little bit each year, but now it's Tobias Harris, and this is what I talk about with scapegoaters. And I had to explain this morning. Look, the guy's awful. So your assumption that you just replace Tobias and everything's fine, you're blaming a non-entity for the way the Sixers play, and they don't play the right way to win the modern game. So you can insert a better role player, whatever. If you look at every Sixers elimination, what does it have in common? Kawhi Leonard, Trae Young, Jason Tatum, and now Jalen Brunson. What do all those players have in common?
Good guard play.
It's not that. They are creators. To close games in the NBA at a high level, I'm not talking about game 46 in Memphis, at a high level in big pressure situations, you need to run the offense through a creator. That's why it's not to say the Sixers can't win a game. They've won games in the playoffs, obviously, or they can't win a series here and there. They've won series in the past before they run up against the creator they can't deal with. That's the modern game. I don't even like it. I wish we could return to the days of Will Chamberlain. I'm with you. Doesn't work that way. Adapt or you become the Sixers. The Sixers have to be up 10 with 4 minutes left to close games. Because if you just start throwing it into the big guy, I know it's illegal. I'm not saying, read my lips. Joel Embiid is the most skilled big man in NBA history. Can't close games. It's the nature of the modern NBA. Shaq had Kobe. Shaq was phenomenal, but Kobe closed games.
Kobe was the closer.
Now, if Tyrese Maxey isn't at that level yet, maybe he becomes that, maybe he doesn't. But right now, he is the Sixers' best option to close games. And they have to run. It can go through Joel for the first 43 minutes. But the final 5 minutes, he's got to set screens and let Tyrese Maxey take over. And they'll be better. I don't know if they can win. Again, we have to see. And then you need tougher role players. Their role players are a joke. Tobias Harris, Kelly Oubre. I think the next rebound might be Kelly Oubre's first. Kyle Lowry, God love him. He's tough, but he's got nothing left.
Nothing left.
Nick Batum is tough, but he's 35. He's only got so much left. There's a couple guys who play the right way, but until the Sixers and their fans, and it's a group, and it's a large group, come to grips with the modern NBA, Fast and the Furious Part 16. I mean, you're just going to keep going down the same route. You can't deal with the high-level creators. They're going to close games, and you don't have an answer. That's just the way it is.
I want to thank everybody for checking in this morning. We will get to football as this is Birds 365.
Yeah,
but I do want to follow up with you, Johnny Mac, real quick on that. But good morning, James, Twiz, SMD Eagles, Rolando, Luke. We appreciate you all being here. Make sure you drop us a like on the show to help us grow. Again, we appreciate you being here. Johnny Mac, has the process officially failed?
That failed long ago. It's not
Well,
you got to get off the process, all Sixers fans, because
I know, but that's the result of the process resulted in Embiid. The process resulted in our love affair with Embiid. We went through the misery to land a player like him. Now, we also landed Ben and Markelle, and all those guys are gone. But when Embiid is gone, the process has officially failed. Are we at that point?
I used to talk about this with Mike Gill on the radio in South Jersey. I said from day one, practically, it can't fail because the people that love it will keep moving the goalpost. And it's exactly, I'm not Nostradamus. It was easily predictable. And they kept moving the goalpost. At first, it became championships. So by that definition, it's an absolute failure. But then it became relevancy, and they keep moving the bar. So look, if you want to be right, you're right. They ended up with a great player. They could have had much more if they did better things. And then you have the other crew that will argue that, well, they didn't let Sam Hinkie finish. And those people are dumb because it's the real world. It's not a vacuum. So, when Sam Hinkie wrote his 13-page manifesto when he got fired, saying, well, Josh Harris told me I'd have as much time as I needed. Well, all right. My mom and dad told me Santa Claus existed when I was younger. You're a grown man in the world of professional sports. There's going to be outside pressure for the dumb shit you were doing. So, no, it was a failure by their original objection, which was a championship. It was a failure. And can they reverse course now that we're so far down the line? Only if they change the mentality. One thing, for those who don't know, I used to cover the Sixers. There was like a 5-year span, and I covered the NBA. There was like a 5-year span before I was in between it. I was covering the NFL, and I was covering the NBA and the Sixers a lot here.
Yeah, many people don't know that. Johnny Mac is very well versed in basketball.
Yeah, and well, I don't know about that, but anyway.
Yeah, I think you are.
The modern game and all, and I don't like it. It just is what it is, and it's the proliferation of threes, and you have this group because they don't. It's easy, and this is the thing I talk about with the Eagles and Brian and Johnson, because we're an Eagles show. I got to get it back to the Eagles. And Brian Johnson, Sean Desai last year, Matt Patricia, whomever you want to scapegoat in the past, Mike Rowe. It's easy to scapegoat. You don't want to look at the real problem, so you scapegoat somebody else. It's not a Philadelphia thing. It happens.
Well, last question for you, Johnny Mac, on the Sixers, and we'll get into the rookie camp, and we'll talk Eagles all the rest of the show. We have Paul Domowitch coming up in hour number 1, and then later on in the show, we have Mark Farzetta from the Farzy Show. So we'll have 2 good guests to talk Eagles draft and everything. How do you fix it? Is it get rid of Embiid? Is it build around Maxey? If Johnny Mac was it was in Daryl Morey's shoes with $50 million to spend, some expiring contracts, what are you doing?
Well, you need tougher-minded players. Like as goofy as it sounds, they could have used Beverly.
You need red star players.
You need red star players. You need the stars, but you see the Knicks role players. They're tough mentally. They're physical. They out effort the Sixers pretty much consistently. You need those types of role players, but you have to win with stars. You have to convince Joel Embiid of what I just said. Look, he can be the guy for 43 minutes. He can be the guy the whole regular season, and he can be the guy for 43 minutes. But in a close game, I'm sorry, it can't run through him in a close game against big-time closers because he's going to be too slow with it. He's going to turn it over. We've seen this again and again and again. And you can't be afraid. The Sixers, and I know this for a fact, Tom Moore and guys who cover the team day to day after I left, very early in his career, the Sixers were what Sam Hinkie made them to be, losers. And they didn't have a lot of cachet, and they're trying to make Joel and Ben happy, and they didn't want to upset them, and they catered to them. And that's just part of the superstar lifestyle. But if you want to win, much like, and Shaq is the best comparison. Look, because of Shaq free throw issues and all that, they would hack a Shaq at times and say, all right, we're going to put this big goofball on the line, and he'll miss one or two. And, all of a sudden we can play the math game. And then it became, all right, it's Kobe's time. And they won championships. Now, I'm not trying to compare Tyrese Maxey to Kobe Bryant, but he's the best the Sixers have right now, and he can continue to develop until they come to that epiphany and convince Joel Embiid, look, we love you. You're great. Final 5 minutes aren't yours, buddy. Sorry. And then you can fit in the role players. And yes, you need tougher people than Tobias Harris and Kelly Oubre. And the tough people the Sixers have are all 35.
Yeah. Like you said, I like the Batum guy, but he's 35. He doesn't have much left.
Yeah. and they're mentally tough. They've stuck around that long for a reason, because they play the game right. They're mentally tough, but they just don't have enough left in the tank. So, you see the difference between Josh Hart. He's not great.
He hustles though, man.
Yeah, he's energy. He's mentally tough. That
guy hustles, man. I love that. Even
the center, obviously he's getting beaten around by Embiid, but he's just, he's not wavering. He's not afraid. He's not scared. They just up and down the roster, they just had tougher players, and the Sixers, to be honest, shouldn't have even gotten it to 6 games.
Yeah, I agree. I thought they were going to lose in 5. That'll do it for 2024 Philadelphia 76ers. I'll see you next
Thanks
year.
for my TED Talk rant.
Shout out to James Carver. James, we do appreciate all your contribution to the show. None of them go unnoticed. We do appreciate it. We need to get Caitlin Clark in here, Johnny Mac. What a player she is.
She'd be tougher than Tobias Harris. I'll tell you that.
She's a hell of a player and a lot of fun to watch. It'll be cool to see her. I think she's going to lift the WNBA up as a whole, which would be pretty cool to see. But Johnny Mac, let's get into our Eagles. This is Birds 365. I want to thank again everybody for being here. We appreciate everybody in the chat room for being here, making the show a success as you always do. Rookie camp starts today, Johnny Mac. What's the protocol? I know you're going down there right after the show. What can we expect to learn from rookie camp?
Not much. I mean, remember the whole team's not there. It's just rookies and undrafted guys who are also rookies. Also, some guys who were injured, have less than 1 year of experience. A couple tryout guys are going to be there. We know of John Ross is going to be there. Jakeem Grant's going to be there. I don't know how many damn kick returners the Eagles need, but everybody they have can return kicks.
So, they got a lot of kick returners.
Yeah. It's going to be interesting to see how they go with that, because that play is going to be more relevant this season. It's basically just a photo op with the younger players. I'm sure fans will get excited when the numbers are locked in and they become official. But I always warn them, guess what? The numbers aren't locked in. They don't become official, because often when you cut down to 53, guys get cut and rookies change their numbers. So be careful. Jersey buyers, as I say every year. I always say I got to cover Randy Moss as a rookie. And for those who don't know, Randy came into camp with number 18, and you saw a proliferation, Zander, around Minneapolis and the surrounding area of 18 jerseys. And then they cut to 53 and he changed to 84.
The only rookie you can be comfortable to buy a jersey on will be Trotter Jr. if he gets 54.
Yes, that you can be comfortable with.
Yeah, all the other ones I would hold off.
Yeah, and a bunch of people probably can just dig out the old Trotter jersey. Don't have to get a new one.
Yeah, add a little junior. And you always recommend that to buy the old jerseys. Yeah. So what do they do today, though? Do they get their helmets? Is it like that type of thing, or are they getting field work? Are they starting to get moving athletically? What goes on down there, and what will be your availability? Will you be able to talk to Anais and Johnny? I know you haven't spoken with those two rookies yet. The only two you guys haven't spoken with will you get a chance to talk to them today?
Yeah, most likely. I mean, not official because we never know until we get down there who
Right.
they're going to give to us. Ever since COVID, we used to be able to get guys walking off the field, but the NFL took advantage. No surprise of the COVID era. Now everybody's got to be brought up to the podium. So I'm sure the Eagles PR staff will give us Johnny Wilson and Anais Smith because we didn't get to talk to him after the draft. So somebody asked me, what am I most looking forward to? I think everybody thinks they're out there for, practice. They're going to do on-field work. It's about an hour. Just getting ramped up, more about sort of setting that template of what the Eagles coaches expect and get them started and all that kind of stuff. Like any job, you have a ramp-up period, whether you want to call it training, just on how the organization works and things like that, what they expect, start to integrate them a little bit. But we only get to see 10, 15 minutes. So it's basically just a photo op, as I said.
Yeah.
And once the real drills start as for what they are, which isn't, it's not like remember, the whole team's not there. So it's not like you can run even 7-on-7s. So, factor that into it. And then the OTAs as you get to late May when the veterans come in, you have more of a football vibe, but even that is tremendously limited. And mandatory minicamp is in early June. That's when you'll get to see some depth chart notes probably and things like that.
Will there be any veterans down there? I know it's a rookie minicamp, but a lot of guys work out at the facilities. Obviously, A.J. Brown, Saquon Barkley are in the area. They were at the Sixers game last night. Jalen Hurts is a guy that likes to work out at the facility. Will there be anyone there? I know you won't have availability to see him or talk to him, but I'd like to think the guys that run that are the leaders on the football team would be down there to introduce themselves to the rookies.
Yeah, the guys who work out at NovaCare, they're allowed to go in and lift weights and do that kind of stuff. They can't have any, sort of the NFLPA is very strict on that. For people that don't know, there's cameras all over the place. There's, they're very strict on what veteran guys can do and rookies as they're coming in, but they're always more worried about the veteran guys, obviously, about the off season, because they know from the old days that, hey, you give a coach an opportunity, he's going to take advantage of it. So those guys aren't involved in any of the on-field work or drills. But yeah, if you live in the area and you work out at NovaCare, you're allowed to come in and do that kind of stuff.
Yeah, so good stuff. Rookie minicamp getting underway today. Johnny Mack will be headed down to NovaCare right at the conclusion of Birds 365 today. Mm-hmm. So pretty good stuff. Coming up after the break in hour number 1, we have Paul Domowitch, Hall of Fame selector, longtime writer, longtime reporter covering the Philadelphia Eagles. Does great work now for the 33rd team. And in season, he does great articles on JAKIBSports.com, so be sure to check that out. And then in hour number 2, we'll have Mark Farzetta, host of the Farzy Show. Obviously starts off JAKIB Sports every morning, so good stuff there. We'll get all their opinions on the draft, on the new players they acquired, and I might even have to ask a Sixers question to Mark Farzetta, who I know spent a good portion of his show this morning ripping them just like you just did. So we'll do all that coming up next on Birds 365. I want to thank everybody again for being in here. Make sure you like the shows. It's the number one thing you can do as a listener to help us reach more people. So we do appreciate all you. Stay tuned on Birds 365. Paul Domowitch coming up next.
field of life, First Trust Bank is there for you.
Champions on 3. 1, 2, 3.
Because Philadelphia dreams deserve a Philadelphia bank.
Heading down the shore. Have a ball once more.
Here, imaginations run wild and time stands still. Because here, you can find the best of the Jersey Shore, all on one 5-mile island. So leave the old you behind and get lost in the woods.
Wild, wild, wildwood day.
Plan your stay in the Wildwoods today.
Hi, I'm Jim Muehlbronner, Managing Partner at Del Val Insurance Group. Give us a call. We're a local, knowledgeable agency, not an 800 number. Go Birds!
The greatest fans on earth. It's a bold statement, but would you expect anything less from Philadelphia? 58 years of heartache creates a toughness, a grit, a resolve not found in most. Sure, our prayers were answered, but now that we've had a taste, we're looking for more. Pondley Hockey, official partner of the Philadelphia Eagles.
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 Welcome back in, everybody, to Friday's edition of Birds 365. Still waiting on our friend Paul Domowitch to join the show. He should be up shortly. But, John, I want to give you a chance. It's Friday now. The draft is in the books, and we're now going to go into we're obviously talking about rookie minicamp, but just recapping what they've done in the draft so far. What they not so far, what they did in conclusion. They get a lot of good players, a lot of hype, as we talked about yesterday, a lot of praise for Howie Roseman. Yesterday, they put up the unscripted behind the scenes, which was tremendous to see. But just a chance to comment on the draft process, how it played out this year. I know we're not going to be able to grade players yet, but just an overall 5 days removed perspective from what the Eagles were able to do last weekend.
Yeah, I mean, yesterday, I'm trying to pull it up as we speak, was May 2nd was the deadline for the fifth-year options of the Zach Wilson class, as I would like to call it, of the NFL draft. So, Zach Wilson, Trey Lance, Justin Fields, Mac Jones. So how about that quarterback class? Zaven Collins, Jamin Davis, Kadarius Toney, Caleb Farley, Najee Harris, Peyton Turner, Eric Stokes, Joe Tryon, Alex Leatherwood, Rashad Bateman were not even eligible because Leatherwood already got cut and Bateman hasn't had enough accrued seasons to be eligible. Did not have their fifth year options picked up. So as you see these goofy draft grades, everybody's pretty happy. History tells us, and that's the day every year when those fifth year options come due, that tells you a lot of guys don't make it. And a lot of guys, and you can go back and look at any draft analyst, whoever your favorite is, and they have some glowing thoughts about all those players. So the glow over the immediacy of the draft often wavers pretty quickly. And today is the first opportunity we'll get to see. And it starts with the most notable players, obviously Quinyon Mitchell, Cooper DeJean. You saw how excited You mentioned that unscripted show, Zander. You saw how excited Howie Roseman thought the Rams traded up to 39 to get Cooper DeJean. They went a different way. Took the kid from Florida State, the defensive tackle, to try to replace Aaron Donald. Good luck with that, LA Rams, by the way. I don't like his Brandon Fisk I'm talking about. Very good player, but just unreachable expectations. And the Eagles were able to get Cooper DeJean. So it's exciting in the moment. It's not always exciting 5 years down the line when you look back. And that's just the NFL draft. So it's the first step of many. Developmental aspect of it is real. I always say you don't draft. I think way too many believe you draft a good player or a bad player. And that's just not the reality. Coaches got to get involved. They got to get people up to speed. There's going to be some hiccups with Quinyon Mitchell, Cooper DeJean, and everybody else. But if you go back to that 21 class, that's the Devontae Smith class. So there's plenty of good players as well. Jamar Chase, Penei Sewell, see the contracts. Penei already got his. Wait do you see the contract Jamar Chase gets. Micah Parsons is probably the best player in that draft overall. A lot of good players. Eagles got two of them with Devontae Smith and Landon Dickerson, who both already got their extensions. So it can go well, but it can also go not as well as many expected. And this is just the first step of it.
Yep, got to be patient. And as you pointed out, all those guys that didn't get their fifth-year option. And then to tack onto it, some players that do get their fifth-year option still don't live up to, look at Devin White, right? Devin White got his fifth-year option, ultimately was let go after that. So, but one thing you pointed out that caught my eye on the unscripted was the Cooper DeJean pick. Jeffrey Lurie seemed to really like Cooper DeJean as well. He
was getting upset. By the way,
he was excited when the Rams didn't take him.
You also got to see a little glimpse, and I'm kind of surprised because the Eagles obviously edited that thing pretty well. Good job, Eagles.
Yeah, they did tremendous. It's almost like watching a TV show, watching that thing. It's tremendous. Yeah. Their media team.
But you'll notice they never mentioned a player they didn't get. It was always players they wanted and they ended up getting. They don't mention the guys they don't get, which I understand why. But yeah, Jeffrey kind of plays it off like, oh, I don't get involved. He seemed pretty involved.
Yeah, especially in that pick. I mean, he must have really liked that player. I don't think he's involved in 4, 5, and 6 maybe in those rounds.
Yeah,
but
I don't know if that's the case, but yeah, he's pretty involved. He likes it. He likes it.
You can tell. He can tell.
By the way, it's his stinking team. And we just saw an abject disaster of a team and an organization. And as I said, for people tuning in this morning, Eagles generally make good decisions. And, Jeffrey's a part of that. He is. He deserves it.
Yep,
I
agree.
That part of it.
His toy, he owns it. He's allowed to do what he wants. We're just here to watch and enjoy the show. Paul Domowitch is ready to join us, so we'll bring him up now. Domo, welcome to the show, man. How you doing?
Good, guys. Apologize. I was a little late.
That's all right.
You're probably hungover from that great Sixers performance. I get it.
Yeah.
The whole Delaware Valley's a little frustrated, but they get rookie camp, Domo. How exciting. What an exciting day to get the rookies and the undrafted guys, and they're bringing in John Ross. What is this, 2018? I don't know. Jakeem Grant's coming in. All this exciting Eagles rookie camp. What's your favorite moment of rookie camp? Everybody asked me that. I said seeing Paul Domowitch and everybody else. That's my most exciting moment. Not the players, not so much. Although we didn't get to speak to Johnny Wilson and Anaya Smith after the draft, so a little bit interested in talking to those guys.
Yeah, and getting a chance to talk with undrafted free agents. And
well, we don't get that chance until training camp now, because post-COVID, Damo, Yeah, now they bring everybody up to the podium, and they ain't bringing undrafted guys up to the podium. It's awful.
You know, I'm not sorry I retired.
Yeah. I'm with you, because to me, always the most interesting stories are the undrafted guys.
Yeah.
And you're not allowed to talk to them until you see them at training camp. And even then, you got to clear it with everybody from 16 levels of PR, I think, up to Jeffrey Lurie. Because God forbid if you get a quote from, I don't know. I'm trying to look at their undrafted class, by the way, is very small because they don't have a lot of spots. They have tremendous depth, and it's 7 players deep, which Howie said is the smallest undrafted class he's had. But Gabe Hall is the name I was searching for. He's a defensive tackle from Baylor. He's 6'6", which is kind of weird for a defensive tackle, and he's only 285, 290. So he should probably be an old school 5 technique in a 3-4 defense, but most people thought he would get drafted. So, yeah, he'd be a great story, but I guarantee you I can't talk to Gabe Hall today. It's depressing.
Yeah. Well, something to look forward to when you get to training camp, John.
Well, yeah. There better be bigger stories than Gabe Hall at that point, unless the Eagles are in trouble.
Yeah.
But draft as a whole, Damo, we got you for Quinyon Mitchell, the first round pick last week, but Cooper DeJean trading up to 40. I don't know if you saw the Eagles unscripted show on social media, but they went in the war room. It was pretty interesting. They thought the Rams were trading up to 39 to get him, so they were kind of upset. Jeffrey was kind of upset. And then the Rams went with Brandon Fisk, and the Eagles were able to make the trade with Washington. But your thoughts on Cooper, Jalix Hunt, developmental prospect, and the day 3 picks?
Yeah, I mean, over the years, when Howie's made mistakes, I've been the first to jump on him. I mean, I think I look at this draft, and look right now, without knowing whether any of these guys are going to end up being unexpected busts. I like what he's done. I mean, I like the fact that he was aggressive at addressing the cornerback position in a draft that was deep in cornerbacks and in a position, they need to get younger and better at. I like the way he moved up and down the board, like the way he added picks for next year. There's not a lot to not like about it right now. I mean, obviously that could change, if we get 2 years down the road and Quinyon Mitchell isn't performing near as well as the guy they passed on.
That's going to be bad. That's going to be because Terrion Arnold, well, I think he went 24. Two spots after Quinyon. We've been through that before. I mean, Dama, Brandon Graham had to hear about Earl Thomas and Jason Pierre-Paul for years until his career kind of took off.
Yeah.
And obviously the most obvious recent example would be Jalen Reagor, Justin Jefferson.
Mm-hmm.
When somebody at the same position goes so closely after you, that's like a big spotlight. And we'll see if the Eagles are right. I would say Terrion Arnold, probably the safer pick from my perspective. But Nick Saban, was who's he doing an analysis for? I think it was ABC. I don't know.
ABC.
He said he was trying to get him to Alabama, so that's a positive. Was trying to get him to go to Alabama through the transfer portal. That kind of settled down any fears about Toledo and lack of competition.
Yeah, and I've got to believe that Vic Fangio signed off on this. Looked at both of them hard, probably exhausted the tape study, and feels comfortable that that this kid's going to, both these kids are going to thrive in his system. So, I don't have a big problem with it. And I don't think Quinyon Mitchell is going to be Jalen Rager, but
No, I'm not. Yeah, I wasn't trying to insinuate that. Just the pressure
right.
of the same position. If one guy, and by the way, Terrion Arnold's not going to be Justin Jefferson. I mean, that's very unlikely as well. So that's an extreme example. But yeah, there's tremendous pressure when it comes that close at the same position.
Yeah.
On both players, really. Yeah.
Yeah, and more from the Philadelphia perspective than the Detroit perspective, because Detroit didn't have the luxury of picking between the two, right? I mean, we did, where there was both on the board. We went one way. Dom, I want to ask you, we're going to get into, I'm sure, each player and stuff like that, but you've been covering the league for a long time. You're obviously a Hall of Fame selector, so you see guys that make it to the Hall of Fame, which is the pinnacle of this sport. Is there any attribute that you look for in a player, whether it be physical, whether it be mental, that stands out to you that you're like, that's an attribute I want in a player I'm drafting? It can be first round, it can be fourth round, fifth round. Is there anything that stands out to you when I know you're probably not analyzing the draft as much as you used to, but anything that stands out to you that you look for in these players?
Well, I mean, I think intelligence is huge. For a while there, the Eagles were getting overly obsessed with analytics and had some mistakes. The Davion Taylors, because they were paying too much attention to 40 times and 10 times and things like that. Yeah, I want a smart guy. Probably would take a guy that has no interest in social media.
You know what? That's not a guarantee as well. You know, the old school. Sometimes you need a what in the locker room.
Yeah.
If a guy's really talented. And by the way, I'm not. AJ Brown's a great guy, actually, behind the scenes, but he's a guy who embraces social media, probably to his detriment at times. I'm taking him. I'll suffer through it. The occasional kerfuffle. In other words, talent does win out. I mean, you give me the most talented guy, Jalen Carter. This red star thing has become a thing with the Eagles because Howie let it out last year when he was talking about Sidney Brown. And this year he said there were 5 red star players. So what's our next question? Who are the red star players? And Howie didn't want to say it in public because he didn't want to downgrade the other guys who aren't red star players. And which is ironic because that unscripted show confirmed 3 of the red star players because it showed part of the red star meeting. And so it ended up, at least some of them, getting out there anyway. But I really don't think most fans know what red star players are. So they say, well, one of them has to be Quinyon Mitchell because he's a first round pick. No, that's the blue chip guys. That's the top guys. Red star is that nebulous, great character, football, intelligence, everything you have to be what Jeffrey Lurie and Howie Roseman says it means to be a Philadelphia Eagle. Work in the community, all that kind of good stuff, which is all good. And guys like Will Shipley, if you saw Will Shipley's interview, man, that kid's impressive, Damo. I said 1,000% he's a red star guy. And he was. Jeremiah Trotter Jr. was one. Trevor Keegan, national team captain, national champions, he was one. All these high character guys. But give me the Jalen Carters, man. That Jalen didn't get in trouble. He had that one kerfuffle at Target or whatever it was. He was fine, but he had some issues. Everybody knows there's a reason he went number 9 overall, not number 1 or number 2. But I still want that guy on my team, Damo. I don't want all character guys, all, church.
Yeah.
I need some guys who can just flat out play. And if they have some maybe blemishes, you got to live with it.
Yeah. One thing I'm going to be interested to see, guys, this year with a player like Carter is, they drafted him thinking, we have the guys in the locker room that can handle him, that can keep him under control, that can motivate him. Excuse me. Two of those key guys are gone, Fletcher Cox and Kelsey. So I want to see what Jalen Carter does this year, essentially on his own. He's entering his second year. Probably thinks he's knows what he needs to do. We're going to find out. Or maybe some other leaders will keep after him if he starts to slip, but or as well as other guys. So that's one of the things I'm be interested in watching this year with him.
Yeah, I thought their thought process at least was sound, and the unscripted that John mentioned. They did talk about, because some of those guys left, Kelsey and Cox. That's why I think they put a bigger emphasis on the Red Star players, this year. But not that I think a rookie's going to tell an older, better, more established player what to do, but the culture aspect of it, I think, works. But Dom, I want to get your perspective on Cooper DeJean, obviously a guy that slipped and fell a little bit into the second round, how he played the board perfectly. He waited till 40, jumps up at the right time, and then you see a run on cornerbacks. But just your thoughts on that player and how you think he fits in Philly.
Well, I mean, if you're drawing up a guy that's perfect for the Fangio scheme, it's Cooper DeJean.
Right.
Can play anywhere on that back end. You can line him up outside. You can line him up in the slot. You can move him back to safety. So on paper, he looks perfect for Vic. We'll find out. I mean, comes from a good program. I mean, I'm going to be interested to see how both he, and Mitchell fit in with Vic. I think that they need to get better on that back end. I mean, they gave up the second most touchdown passes in the league last year. I like DeJean. I think I think he's perfect for Fangio.
Yeah, it's interesting to me from the perspective of Cooper, the versatility, Damo. And the Eagles did scout him as an outside corner, and somebody picked that up, and I said that, and I think people misunderstood what I'm trying. First of all, he played mainly outside corner at Iowa, and he also played what they call the cash position, where he moved all over the field, inside, outside, but to a much lesser extent. Mm-hmm. So from a scouting perspective, they were scouting him as an outside corner. Now, it's up to the coaches how they use him. And to me, if he wants to get on the field early, you're not playing outside corner, barring injury. That's going to be Slay. That's going to be Quinyon Mitchell. So he's got to play somewhere else. And that versatility sometimes can hurt a player, because you can do so many different things as far as settling into one spot. To me, his best chance to get on the field is a nickel linebacker. And I think that helps the Eagles in two ways. One, it gets one of their linebackers off the field, and they're playing essentially big nickel with three safeties. And it gets Cooper in the lineup. Is that what you see him as, or do you see him as a potential outside corner once Slay retires?
I don't know. I mean, I want to see him play a little bit on the outside, but no, I think his long-term future probably is either in the slot or back at safety. I mean, I remember when Avonte Maddox was drafted and was playing, and he had some of the skills to play on the outside, but he was just too small. I mean, there was no way he was going to ever be an outside corner. So it meant he was, but the slot right now is, they've got a lot of bodies there now. If Avonte Maddox stays healthy, they don't need DeJean to play inside. Will Isaiah Rodgers pan out? We'll see. They got Tyler Hall. I mean, they've got a wealth of bodies there right now. Whether any of them are going to be the answer, we'll find out. I think right now, immediately DeJean's future probably is that nickel linebacker. I think they'll play it a lot this year. assuming all these guys can tackle, and you don't need that linebacker on the field.
I keep waiting for somebody, Damo, to say, look, all right, they're just spiking the football in our face. They got 205-pound guys playing linebacker. Let's line up. Let's run the stinking football. One cut. Let's run these people over. Nobody does it.
Yeah.
I'm amazed. There was talk that Bill Belichick might do it. Now he's not coaching anymore. I get it's a smaller, like, I don't want to play that way. Jeffrey Lurie would fire everybody if the Eagles played that way. You can't play that way consistently. But Nick says all the time, look, I'm going to do what I have to do to win a game.
Yeah.
On a particular game, if I got Cooper DeJean playing linebacker from 60% of the snaps, I got to run the football, don't I? Or anybody just, all right, forget about it. That's the way we play now.
Yeah. Well, it'll be interesting, but like you said, not too many teams are committed to that anymore. Everybody's taking the Andy Reid approach that you win in this league by passing. Although Andy's done pretty good with Isaiah Pacheco.
Yeah, which is ironic because he's a hard runner. He's a chain mover. He's not, explosive. He's not the guy who's going to break off the 80-yard run. He's not Chris Johnson with the 4.24 speed. It's ironic he landed with Andy, and they utilize him pretty well, especially in big spots. Maybe that's part of Andy's greatness. He was pulling the wool over our eyes. He'll use it if he can get it.
The Eagles, and I think this comes from Lurie, their whole strategy over the last 3, 4, 5 years has been, and you saw this 2 years ago when they averaged so many when they averaged so many points in the first half. Grab the lead, make the team you're playing play catch up. Takes away the run. I mean, until last year, for the previous couple of years, Eagles, their defense was averaging the fewest rushing attempts in the league, I think, because teams just couldn't afford to play that game. They had to throw. And I think in an ideal situation, that's what they want this year too. So, it kind of comes back to the offense as far as how you scheme your defense.
Is there more pressure on Jordan Davis than anybody else? Because I feel like he's the only run defender on the entire team. The linebackers aren't good. They're undersized. The real linebackers. And now if you add Trott, same thing, undersized. For those who don't know, he ain't his dad from a physical perspective. And 260-pound linebackers don't exist anymore. But one of the knocks and when he became a 5th-round pick was that he's undersized. And, can he hold up? And Nakobe Dean, obviously, same thing. Devin White, I don't know what to expect. I got some people, Damo, saying this guy's great. That number 5 pedigree overall, that carries some weight because people are still talking about this guy like, oh, it's going to come this year with the Eagles. Vic's going to unlock something, which, by the way, if Vic unlocks something with Devin White, I'm going to be in Vic Fangio's corner because he's a freaking genius. Some people love him. Some people are like me. I've seen no evidence of it. Why does it turn on in year 6? If I look at that draft and say, oof, they could have used something even more than offensive line, which was the biggest surprise, it would have been off-ball linebacker. And they didn't get it till the 5th round. That's a concern.
Yeah. I'm a big fan of Vic's. I've known him a long time. And maybe I put too much pressure on him to look at this team and think that, he's going to maximize a lot of these guys, including players like Devin White. You look at White, he's an undisciplined, he's talented, but he's undisciplined, benched last year. And you think that, okay, Vic's going to, like you just said, Vic's going to turn him around, get the most out of him. Maybe that's not possible with everybody. I think, there are guys like Jordan Davis where he needs to. I mean, whatever it's going to take to get Davis and Carter to what they thought they were getting when they drafted them in the first round, they need to do, because, in my mind, those two guys are the whole key to this defense this season.
Yeah. And by the way, I agree with you on Vic. I think he's going to maximize the guys he has. And I think everybody's going to be better prepared. I think that, and I've already said, Zander can tell you, I've already said they're going to have a top 16 defense. So top half, which is going to be a massive improvement over last year. I think right away, just from his presence, they're going to be better prepared. They're going to understand their roles better. They're going to have better roles that fit their specific traits. I think all of that is going to happen. But I also think you can't turn water into wine. I mean, I've seen this guy play for 5 years. Other than the 3 games and the run to the Super Bowl, he's been terrible.
Yeah.
And his contract tells you all you need to know, I think.
I mean, he better get the most out of those 2 guys in the front, because Fletcher Cox is gone now, and I think the whole defense depends on that front. I mean, if they're not good, the defense isn't going to be good. So he better get the most out of those 2 first rounders.
Yeah, you got to build the foundation on Carter and Davis. The whole defense has got to be built on Carter and Davis. That I certainly agree with. At P Damo, make sure you follow Paul on X, Twitter. Does a tremendous job with us each week. Nobody knows more about the NFL. Nobody knows more about the history of the NFL. Vic Fangio. When did you meet Vic Fangio, Damo? To tell people what year?
84.
84. So that's the kind of info you're getting on Vic Fangio and his potential impact on this defense, which I think is going to be large. The one thing the Eagles didn't get in the draft that they thought they were going to get, and how he admitted it, and it's rare when he admits these things, was an offensive lineman, because there were so many of them, and it just didn't work out for them.
Yeah.
And they went a different direction. And immediately after the draft, Damo, they bring in Mekhi Becton. Now, I think it's a worthy roll of the dice. I mean, number 11, speaking of Devin White, number 5, this is the number 11 overall pick. Obviously, he's got tremendous skill. He doesn't have to hit the ground running. Maybe Jeff Stoutland gets him. He's a good swing tackle. Who knows? Maybe he could be the heir apparent to Lane Johnson in a few years. But Jeff Mosher brought this up. What if they try him at right guard? He's 6'8". I don't know how Jalen's going to see any receivers between Mailata and Lane and Landon and Mekhi Becton. Yeah. There's going to be some problems with just seeing receivers, especially Aniyah Smith. How are you going to see Aniyah Smith with those guys, with those trees?
I don't think you are, John. That's what I think the answer is. I don't think you are.
Is it a possibility? I mean, Landon's 6'6", and he's a great guard. What's the difference between 6'6" and 6'8"?
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting possibility. I mean, I don't know what Tyler Steen is. I mean, we're going to find out. I mean, they seem, they obviously are high on him. But I mean, if Becton can move inside, it's something to consider. But I have no idea whether he can do it or not.
No, I don't think he's never done it. And
he's
got long
whole life. Yeah,
he's got those long arms.
Yeah.
Obviously, he's going to get out leveraged. But if he can play, I mean, it seems pretty evident they're not sold on Tyler Steen, and they want competition. Now, I think it's more likely going to be Matt Hennessy if he's healthy.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't surprise me if Matt Hennessy's a day one starter. A lot of health issues, but if he's healthy.
With a lot of these guys like Hennessy, like Sidney Brown, we don't know where they are in their rehab right now. We don't know whether they're going to be ready in July, whether they're going to be ready in September. I mean, if Hennessy's ready to go, if he can, if he participates in the spring mini camps, that's a good sign. I mean, and I think he will put pressure on Steen at right guard, because I mean I like Hennessy. He started 17, and he gives them depth at tackle. He started
Yeah, he
17.
was a good player in Atlanta until the injuries took over. Yeah,
Yeah.
he was turning into a solid ascending player, and then it just injuries. He could be this year's Justin Evans. Hopefully, he holds up better. But everybody's like Justin Evans, and all of a sudden, week 1 in New England starts, and he's your starting safety. Then he got hurt again.
Yeah.
But he won the job, and I think Matt Hennessy could be this year's Justin Evans. You're like, that guy. And all of a sudden, week 1 shows up in Brazil. Hopefully, he gets back from Brazil.
Yeah.
He might be your week 1 starter.
That's always been how he's approached the free agency with a lot of these guys. He knows he can get guys on 1-year contracts at a lot less money. If guys with injury histories, guys coming off injuries like Hennessy. 2 things can happen. One is they stay healthy and you got yourself a hell of a player. The other is the history of injuries continues and they end up spending the year on IR and you getting money for nothing.
Yeah.
Damo, I'm going to switch gears here. The one not controversial, but the one that was debated was that 3rd round pick where the Eagles went with edge rusher Jalix Hunt out of Houston Christian. Forget the evaluation of the player at this point. What'd you make of that decision to go with kind of a project type player? Eagles admitted he's not a guy you're going to get anything from in year 1, at least, maybe not even until year 3 or 4. What'd you make of that pick in round 3?
Well, I mean, I got some concerns, Zander, about their whole edge rushing situation because I don't know what they've got in Nolan Smith. I mean, he was a developmental player last year, as it turns out.
Yeah.
I mean, what did he play? Like 170 snaps?
Yeah. Man.
1 sack. That can't happen this year. I mean, he's got to step up and be a big-time player. And so that's why I worry about taking a Hunt as a developmental player in the 3rd round because basically you're saying, well, we're going to get enough from what we got that we don't need this guy to really do much in the first year. And I'm not sure they can say that. I mean, Brandon Graham's not going to give him anything this year, I don't think, except maybe 10, 11 snaps a game.
Going to give him energy. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, I mean, he'll give him locker room leadership.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm glad he's there, but, I mean, I think that's going to be a genuine, depending on how some of these other guys do, you wonder if he's going to be on the 48, on Sundays.
Yeah.
But, I mean, some of those edge rushers have to step up. Sweat has to play a lot better than he did in the second half of last year. And if that doesn't happen, they're going to say, maybe we should have gotten a guy with that 3rd round, that maybe is more ready to play.
Yeah, and I think Nolan Smith is the biggest component there that you brought up that really hasn't been mentioned that much. But you're right; he was a 1st round developmental guy. Got basically nothing out of him last year. So if he doesn't take a big step forward, they're looking at probably a significant decrease in productivity from the edge rushers.
Yeah, right. If him and Jordan and the 2 Jalen and Jordan don't ever pan out, that whole Georgia experiment's going to really face.
Bryce Huff, most of the Georgia guys have not worked out. Although I think Jordan gets too much, but I think he's a good player, just not a great player. And maybe most people were expecting a great player. But I do want to end it with Hall of Fame. And from this perspective, I always like to talk Hall of Fame with you, Damo. So last one from me. Jason Kelce, as you know, 6th round pick, number 191 overall. Eagles draft Dylan McMahon, center, North Carolina State, 6th round, 190 overall. So that means he's going to the Hall of Fame too, right? Right, Damo?
Absolutely. Another athletic.
Yeah, exactly. It's the same. Athleticism, undersized, smart guy, team captain. He's probably one of the other Red Stars. Yeah. It's ironic. The Rams traded up where the Eagles were concerned they were going to steal Cooper DeJean from them to get Braden Fisk. Is it Brandon or Braden Fisk? Either way, from Florida State. Undersized defensive tackle. That poor guy's going into the Rams, and they're saying, "Oh, we got to get an Aaron." I feel bad for him. Yeah, I feel bad for Dylan McMahon. I hope nobody expects another Jason Kelce.
I don't think so.
Paul Domowitch, everybody, make sure you follow Domo on Twitter at PDomo and read all his work on the 33rd team. And in season does great work on JAKIB Sports as well. Domo, thanks for joining the show, man. We appreciate
Thanks
it.
for having me, guys. Take care.
Thanks,
Yep.
Dama.
That's Paul Damo joining us. Always good insight. Always good for a guy like me to talk to someone like you and Damo. I mean, I'm born 14 years after Damo's shaking hands with Vic Fangio. There's a lot for me to learn from a guy like that who's been covering the Eagles for a long time.
Vic's been around for a long time. That was the Philadelphia Star days. Philadelphia Stars, Damo's talking about with Vic Fangio. That's how long Vic's been around. He was a Philadelphia Stars coach.
So we'll see what he can do this year with the Eagles. Damo brought up a good point, John, with Nolan Smith. I'll tell you what. He better step up because, although I will say this about Bryce Huff, a guy that
better show up. Bryce Huff better.
Listen,
Bryce Huff better be the real deal.
Yeah, he better be. But we did have Phil Simms on yesterday on the National Football Show with Dan Cilio, a good 45-minute segment with him. And he's very close, obviously, with the Jets at the Jets facility. He said Bryce Huff is tremendous. He spoke really highly of Bryce Huff and said, I think this is a pick you're gonna look back and say the Eagles did it again with that signing. So just one guy's opinion, obviously just an opinion, but I do think he's, a guy like that who's a renowned NFL player. I think it's speaking highly of Bryce is a good thing.
Well, yeah, I mean, obviously the Eagles think very highly of Bryce Huff. He certainly played well when the Jets played the Eagles last season. So he clearly has pass rushing skill and gifts, but it's never been the bigger concern. He's never been a full-time player. And by full-time, all edge rushers in today's world are rotational, but you want to get up to that 70, 75 range of being on the field, 75%. Can he make that jump? That's where you have to be concerned. And as an undersized guy, and we had the same concerns with Hassan Reddick when he was coming in. Can he hold up in run support? So that'll be a question mark as well. But as we talked about with Cooper DeJean potentially playing nickel linebacker, essentially, less and less important, and it keeps going that way, to people putting bigger bodies out there to defend the run in the NFL, just the way it's going. Talked about the Sixers. I don't like it. I like old school. I'd rather have Wilt Chamberlain and pound it into the box all the time. Can't do it. Can't do it. You're going to lose. Margin of error is too small. They're hiking up threes. Jalen Brunson, back-to-back threes, Zander. Bang, bang. 6 points. Good luck. Means you got to be perfect. Hitting the blocks 3 consecutive times, no turnovers. Got to play a certain way to win consistently.
Shout out to James. We'll talk about this after the break about the Red Star players. They did confirm 4. Is it 4? I thought they confirmed 3 of them in the movie. But John, we were speculating all week. So we'll talk a little bit about that when we come back, and then the next pieces to add. But boy, we talk about that Georgia defense, those Georgia Bulldogs. A lot of this defense is hinging on those guys between Jalen and Jordan Davis, Nolan Smith, even got Keely Ringo on the back end. So we'll talk about all that coming up next on Bird 365. I want to thank everybody for joining in on the show. Everybody in the chat box, we appreciate you, Crawley and James and Daz. Make sure you guys like the show, as it's the number one thing you can do to help out our show and to help us reach more Eagles fans. And come on, everybody should be listening to Johnny Mac. So we appreciate you all tuning in. Make sure you stay tuned. Coming up in hour number 2 is Mark Farzetta. Stay tuned here on Birds 365.
field of life, First Trust Bank is there for you.
Champions on three. 1, 2, 3.
Because Philadelphia dreams deserve a Philadelphia bank.
Heading down the shore. Have a ball once more.
Here, imaginations run wild and time stands still. Because here, you can find the best of the Jersey Shore, all on one 5-mile island. So leave the old you behind and get lost in the woods.
Wild, wild, wildwood days.
Plan your stay in the Wildwoods today.
Hi, I'm Jim Muehlbronner, Managing Partner at Del Valle Insurance Group. Give us a call. We're a local, knowledgeable agency, not an 800 number. Go Birds!
The greatest fans on earth. It's a bold statement, but would you expect anything less from Philadelphia? 58 years of heartache creates a toughness, a grit, a resolve not found in most. Sure, our prayers were answered, but now that we've had a taste, we're looking for more. Pondley Hockey, official partner of the Philadelphia Eagles.
EAGLES, Eagles.
Welcome back in, everybody, to Friday's edition of Birds 365, putting a wrap on the week on draft week coming out of the NFL draft. Good work done by the Eagles all week long. Good thing they put out yesterday, John. I want to get into real quick the next pieces to add. Somebody on SI, and I don't know this guy, but you must know him. I can't think, I'm blanking on the name right now, who wrote an article about going and targeting a veteran wide receiver and some other players. So I just wanted to use that to ask you where you think the next filling out of the roster will come. I think about the cornerback room. There's no way they can add another cornerback. And then the return man, I'm like, there's no way they can add any more return guys either. So where do you think they're lacking and need some depth, or where do you think Howie could go next?
Unfortunately, you see those stories. They're aggregation stories where
they're just right.
Yeah, somebody, a big name comes and so and so's a fit. No, they're not. They're not a fit. They're not even remotely a fit. But yeah, as you get not a lot of room on the Eagles right now for veteran players, they sort of cast their lot so far. Now, as we see, once you get to, in this case, we're going to have a mini camp for the first time in the Nick Sirianni era. And certainly when you get to training camp, talk about linebacker last year. All of a sudden, you get the training camp and you're Howie Roseman and you go, ooh, this isn't good enough. And Zach Cunningham and Miles Jack are there the next day. And that's where you're more likely to see some situations. And obviously, same thing, linebacker. They might get to training camp, early in training camp, and saying, this ain't working. We got to go in a different direction. And then right guard, Dalton Reisner's a guy who's still out there. Weird, because he's a pretty good player. He didn't sign till in season last year. He's still not signed now, and he goes out there and he plays well, and he doesn't get signed again. And, he's a little bit older. That's part of it. He doesn't want to play for the veteran minimum, so he kind of not holds out because he's not signed anywhere, but he holds his ground, and then somebody gets desperate and signs him and brings him in. and he plays pretty well. So, maybe the Eagles get to camp and say, Tyler Steen's not ready. Matt Hennessy's hurt again. Mekhi Becton, 6'8", 360 pounds, can't play right guard.
Play guard.
And all of a sudden he's here. I think you're talking about more of a training camp thing. And then wide receiver, John Ross is going to be in today. Jody and I used to have a lot of fun talking about Quez Watkins, more Jody than me. But specifically,
Jody hated Quez Watkins.
Specifically what Nick Sirianni would say about Quez Watkins. And he would always say his speed is real. It stretches the field. And it is real from Nick Sirianni's belief. And they don't have that player right now.
I think it's real when the threat is real. Like, I think the thing with Quez was the threat became non-existent because even our opponents knew he wasn't a real option for us. If the perceived threat is there, even if you don't use them, it opens up the defense. It opens up space for AJ and Devontae. But people stopped caring about Quez Watkins, and that's where I think he was a lost cause at that point.
Yeah, well, it's not about people caring or fans caring, or I had heard that from you just let him go. You can't do that. You look like a moron. I said, if you're gonna, you think Quez Watkins gonna drop the football, so just let him run past everybody on the defense. No. Nick's point was you have to respect that speed on the field.
Yeah, but if you can't catch the ball, who cares? Good, blow my top off.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. That's ridiculous to say. Quez has caught how many balls in the NFL?
Yeah, but he also dropped some really big ones, John.
Yeah, but that's
not all catches are created equal.
We're talking from a coaching perspective.
No, I understand what you're saying. I'm not going to go down.
You cannot allow any NFL receiver to just run by you and assume, well, this guy's not Jamar Chase. This guy's not Justin Jefferson. He's not going to catch the football. Well, he's caught it 98 times in his NFL career. He's got a 91-yard reception. He's got a 53-yard touchdown reception. He's got a 43-yard touchdown reception. You can't just let him run past you and ignore him.
No, I understand what you're saying.
When you have a 4-3 guy, a legit 4-3 guy who you have to respect, and you probably don't want to respect, you probably do what you and Jody want to do and say, just let him go. We can't bother that guy. Then you're going to get fired. You're going to get fired the next week. So you have to respect it, and that creates space for the real playmakers. And I do think Nick overstated it too much, and he talked about it too much, but I also think it's real. I think spacing is a big part of the modern NFL, and you got to have that deep threat. And the Eagles are bringing in John Ross for a reason, and it ain't because he's been a productive receiver. It's because he ran a 4.22. And they don't have that guy right now.
One other position I want to ask you about, Johnny Mack. Let me address Robert Klein real quick. Jody Mack, all good things do come to an end. We appreciate what he did for this program for 3 years. Jody Mack does a lot of late night work, and he's been doing radio, doing sports talk for a long time. And getting up was a task for him. So we mutually just ended the partnership there, but all love to Jody Mack. He did tremendous work. Johnny Mack, I know you loved working with Jody, and Jody always said how much he loved working alongside Johnny Mack. So Jody is gone. He won't be back on Birds 365, but we do appreciate all of his contributions. John, one other thing I want to ask you about is on the depth conversation is defensive tackle. They lost Fletcher Cox. I know they have the two guys they drafted in round one, and Jordan Davis and Jalen Carter. A lot of people talked about that undrafted free agent. Any more depth you think they need at defensive tackle to make? I mean, Fletcher Cox is a guy. I know he's one guy, but in a roster building, when you have a young player, he's almost like two guys where you get the reliability and he plays the snaps and he's got the experience and the leadership and all of that. You think they need any more in that room at that position?
Yeah, well, I think Milton Williams has to step up a little bit, and I think, you know, the Eagles certainly have confidence in him. He's been a good player. Now he's got to be a good player who plays more snaps. If you talk about their 50 fronts, with the 5-man fronts, that whether they play a nose tackle, and that's Jordan Davis, they play 2-4-eye techniques, which are Jalen Carter and had been Fletcher Cox. That's going to be Milton Williams's job. And then, you know, when they shift to the 40 fronts, the 4-man fronts, which is the more pass rushing look, you know, obviously you're going to have Bryce Huff and Josh Sweat on the outside. The inside is going to be Jalen Carter. And you probably want it to be more often than not Milton Williams. So there's a guy who's going to have a huge role on defense and really needs to play well. And then the depth, there's some concern. The Eagles like Marlon Tuipulotu. They like Moro Ajomo, but Moro hasn't played yet at all. 7th round pick last year. They brought in PJ Mustipher to back up. He's a big body to back up Jordan Davis, hopefully. So there's some depth concerns. And maybe there's an opportunity to somebody like Gabe Hall, who I mentioned earlier in the show, but he's such a weird body type for defensive tackle, 6'6", but he's under 300 pounds. So interesting to see where his fit. They might play him at defensive end just because he looks more like a defensive end than a defensive tackle. But his history in college at Baylor is defensive tackle. So they have some unproven. They have some guys they think that can play, but they haven't proven it yet.
John, one more question on a different position. Linebacker, obviously, is a light room. That not a lot of talent at that position right now. We've talked about it all week long. Is Oren Burks a player that could have a bigger contribution than people are thinking? I've seen a lot of comments on social media about him. I've seen even some in the JAKIB comments on YouTube. Is he being slept on? Is he a player that can contribute? I know he had some role in the 49ers. What can he do for this team?
Yeah, he's going to be the 3rd linebacker. So he's going to be the top backup unless Jeremiah Trotter really hits the ground running, which is a possibility. We talked about, you don't want him to be a starter, Oren Burks. You saw him in the Super Bowl. For those paying attention to the Super Bowl, horrific luck for the 49ers. Dre Greenlaw running onto the field tore his Achilles. And all of a sudden, Oren Burks had to be out there and play in the biggest stage. And he held up okay. Not the best pass coverage guy in the world, but he's a really good special teams player, one of their core special teams players. So that should make the Eagles even better in a year where it's more relevant because you're going to have more kickoff returns. And you're going to need guys to cover those. Oren Burks is going to help Michael Clay's unit, and he'll settle in as that top backup linebacker that would play if Nakobe Dean and or Devin White can't play. Is it great?
No.
He's proven he's a veteran guy. You know, he's not going to shy. You know, he's not going to be a shrinking violet, but you're not going to be thrilled with it. I would say that if it turns out to be the case.
Coming up next,
linebacker's an issue. Linebacker's an issue.
Yeah, we've talked about it all week long. We all know linebacker's an issue. Coming up next on Birds 365, one of my all-time favorites, Mark Farzetta. If you like Mark Farzetta like I do, please like the show because he's coming up next. Mark is as good of a guy behind the scenes as he is on the air. I know
that's not
it's
possible.
Not a shtick, I promise. Mark is the
an
man.
act. He's miserable.
No,
he's
Mark
miserable.
is the best. I love Mark.
After watching the Sixers, he's miserable.
Yeah, he might be today after that abysmal game. So we'll see we'll talk to Mark coming up next after the break on Birds 365. Stay tuned, everybody. And if you like Mark Farzetta, drop us a like. We'll see you on the other side.
Is the best vacation one that you find or one you get lost in? One that takes you to new heights or reminds you to go with the flow? To get your feet wet and your wheels spinning? One that lets you find your own rhythm or get carried away? Find the best of yourself. Get lost in the woods. Plan your stay in the Wildwoods today.
Go passionately. Go fearlessly. Go confidently.
Go Birds!
Go confidently towards your goals with First Trust, Philly's hometown bank for nearly 90 years, and the official bank of the Philadelphia Eagles. We're focused on getting you over the goal line. So go with conviction, go with trust,
Go Birds!
and go forward with us by your side. First Trust Bank, the official bank of Philadelphia dreams. Oh, and go Birds.
Listen, if we even think you owe us money, you won't know what hit you. We'll put liens on everything you own. Raid your bank accounts, retirement fund, pension. You'll open up your paycheck and cry because we'll already have the money. We'll haul you into federal court and you might even go to jail. Hey, it's our job.
Don't fight the IRS alone. The Tax Doctor is here to help you negotiate your tax bill and reduce your stress. Our experts will fight for you using IRS guidelines to stop any IRS actions like bank levies or wage garnishments. Plus, eliminate penalties and interest and reduce your past tax bill so you pay the IRS less. Help is here to deal with the IRS to reduce your stress. If you owe $10,000 or more in back taxes, do not call the IRS alone. Call a tax doctor now for a tax emergency analysis.
I'd have my mom call the number on the screen. You come see me alone. We'll work it out. Really, we will.
Philadelphia fans, we're cut from a different cloth. Born into a brotherhood and bonded to our team for life. We believe anything is possible because we've witnessed the impossible. While we may be from different neighborhoods, come Sunday, we are one and we will be heard. Pondley Hockey, official partner of the Philadelphia Eagles.
EAGLES, Eagles.
Welcome back in, everybody. A Friday edition of Birds 365 following the NFL draft. Joined now by the great Mark Farzetta. Mark, welcome to the show, man.
I heard the term shrinking violet. I was told I was not going to be talking about the Sixers today. So thanks, John.
You can. Yes, you can. I've talked about them.
I
want to talk about them. I want to get
okay.
one question, and then we'll move on. Then we'll go Eagles and rookie camp.
Okay.
Tobias Harris, let me make this clear. Tobias Harris stinks. All right. We can all stipulate that.
Confirmed.
Now, I feel like I see way too many people scapegoating. They don't see the real issues. Well, you get rid of Tobias Harris, you get all this money, you bring in other people. The Sixers, I just talked about it with the Eagles and spacing. The Sixers don't play the right way. And from that, this is what I mean, Mark. Look at any Sixers elimination in the past. Kawhi Leonard, Trae Young, Jason Tatum, last night, Jalen Brunson, all creators. That's how you close games in the modern NBA. That's how you close games. Joel Embiid can be the guy for 43 minutes, Mark. But if you're not up 10, the offense has to go through Tyrese Maxey. Saved him in game 5. That was just, an anomaly. The offense has to run through Tyrese Maxey late in close games in the playoffs. Game 35 in Memphis, I don't give a shit. All Joel Embiid, I don't give a shit. To close games, you need a closer in the modern NBA. Maxey might develop into that, might not, but then you got to get somebody else. Shaq had Kobe. Shaq can do all the Shaq stuff. End of game, Kobe. Until they are honest with themselves, Mark Farzetta. Joel Embiid is a tremendous talent. Let me scream it into the microphone because everybody will say, oh, you can't. And it's an indictable offense to criticize Joel Embiid. It's the way the sport is played. adapt or you become the Sixers. Brunson's going 3-3, bang, bang. That's 6 points. And then you're knocking it down to the block and trudging and turnovers. You can't win like that. That's the problem. Tobias Harris stinks. Scapegoat him all you want. Bring in somebody else who can get a rebound every 15 minutes. Great. You're still going to lose if you don't have a creator. And let him create to finish games. Rant finish, Mark Farzetta.
Wait a minute. I thought there was going to be a question.
Yes.
What was the question? What is it? I just learned about basketball. That's all that just happened there.
The question is rate my rant. There you go.
Yeah, really. Second time Johnny Mac gave that rant today. I enjoyed it just as much as you just did, Farzy.
10 out of 10. I love it. The only thing is, though, last night, and going into the game, quickly on it, because I think we just took up all the Sixers time. But I wanted Tyrese Maxey to run the show. I wanted Joel Embiid to downshift and just play to within his means. His means ended up being pretty damn good. The problem was Tyrese Maxey. Look, the NBA is all about stars. Tobias Harris, I've told everyone for the longest time, stop expecting anything from Tobias Harris. If you get 10 or 15 points from him, it's a blessing. Unfortunately, last night, he literally, not only did he give you nothing, he got you -10. I can't think of a better last line in the last game Tobias Harris ever plays as a Sixer, more fitting to his career as a Sixer than 0 points, 29 minutes, and -10.
That's my point, Mark, and I'll bring it back to the Eagles because I hear them at Eagles show. But Sean Desai, Brian Johnson, people want a scapegoat. And you scapegoat these non-entities, which is fine, and it makes you feel good. But you're not looking at the real problem. Until you look at the real problem, you're still getting beat by Tatum, and you're still getting beat by Brunson, and you're still getting beat by Kawhi Leonard. Until you identify the problem and deal with the problem, you're still losing.
I think we need Johnny Mack as a Sixers defensive coordinator and offensive strategist. I think that's what we need.
Wouldn't be a bad idea.
You wouldn't have that blown coverage. You wouldn't have had that blown coverage that left Josh Hart alone at the top of the key at the end of the game.
You got to be willing to step on some toes and say, and it's not easy. I'm not saying it's easy because you got this organization when it got Joel Embiid was in the shitter. Let's be honest. They had no cachet, joke. And they had to, play up to him like superstars can be high maintenance. You got to sit him down and say, look, big guy, we love you. You're phenomenal. It's your game for 43 minutes. But if it's close, you got to set picks and you got to let this guy create. And sometimes you'll get the ball and you'll be able to finish. But it ain't running through you. I'm sorry. You're not winning that way. And that's the real problem.
Copy that.
Let's get it back to the Eagles. Rookie camp starting. The Eagles get a haul of new picks in the draft. What's your first reaction to the NFL draft that the Eagles had? I thought they did pretty good, got great value, but a lot of praise coming for Howie Roseman right now. What say you, Mark Farzetta?
I saw that the Pat McAfee fella. Two things. One, he's like wearing sleeves now and everything, which is wild. But the other thing is he had it's short sleeves. And then he had Howie Roseman on yesterday, and he was.
I saw he had Howie on. Come on my show, Howie.
Howie was. It's funny to watch Howie try to bro out because he's not a bro, but when he tries to bro out, it was hilarious. But anyway, other than that, I liked it when Howie Roseman really sucked at his job and was terrible. That was a lot more fun for us.
It was so much fun.
But I am of the school of like the GM rarely ever does anything right. The coach is usually an idiot. He'll be fired soon anyway, blah, blah, blah. Like that's like the school of thought that I come from. Right? But damn it, ever since Rieger and that Justin Jefferson fella, Howie's done a hell of a job. And the idea of the 3 straight drafts, getting Jordan Davis, trading for A.J. Brown, you get Jalen Carter, somehow that happens. And then in the very next draft, you get Quenyon Mitchell falling to you at 22. That's not a mistake. I don't know who it was that asked Howie Roseman the question, but I think the vast majority of us were expecting the Eagles to go offensive line in the first round. Whether it was a 22, 20, 25, I think most people were expecting offensive linemen. Howie was asked the question during, I think, the end of the draft press conference. If I had told you before the draft, Howie, that you were going to take an offensive lineman, you weren't going to take an offensive lineman until the fifth round. Yeah, exactly. You were going to take an offensive lineman until the last pick you had in the fifth round. Would you have been surprised? He was like, yeah. like a
rare moment of honesty.
John, I don't know if I've ever seen Howie Roseman more open and honest than he was. Maybe he was a little punchy just because he had made so many moves he was a little dazzled after a long 3 days. Exactly. And he was open and honest about everything. At least that's the way I read it. I don't think I'm the only one that did, but Quinyon Mitchell, Cooper DeJean.
I might start calling him DeJean Cooper. That's not a bad nickname.
Rolls off the tongue. Hey, he said he'd accept Cooper DeJean. Yeah. Like Dallas Goedert shot me down when I pitched him other names other than Dallas when he was drafted by the Eagles. Cooper DeJean saying he might go with the change there. I love it at all. I also love the fact that he listens to Frank Sinatra as part of his pregame ritual, so that's a good thing.
Never a bad thing.
Never a bad thing. I really like what the Eagles did, and they needed defensive help. I wanted them to if it was up, my prediction and my desire were two different things. My prediction was that the Eagles were going to go offensive lineman in the first round. My desire was that they would take a corner. They got arguably the two best corners in the draft. They got arguably the best corner in the draft, and at least two of the top five at worst in the draft. So I'm very happy. And I knew they needed help. I like the versatility of Cooper DeJean's game. The only possible tweak, which again would be a desire and never a prediction, would be when Cooper DeJean went, I went, okay, how long is it going to take for Edgerrin Cooper to go off the board? Is it going to be into Kobe Dean thing where he's going to slip to the third round and we all don't know anything or whatever? And he went 5 picks later, I think it was.
Yeah. So, well, ironically, it was to Green Bay, who the Eagles traded ahead of to get Cooper DeJean. So they were probably going to take Cooper DeJean. They dropped back because the Eagles stole him, and they get Edgerrin Cooper. So that will be an interesting story. What you bring up with Howie, and you as a talk show guy who covers everything, Phillies, Sixers, Flyers. Yes, it's more, you can see me. I have fun ripping the Sixers. I love it. It's so easy. I got to talk about this team 2 hours a day.
Yeah.
The guy makes too many damn good decisions. And people say, I'll rip him. I'm waiting to rip him. It's hard to rip him.
Yeah.
He does a really, really good job.
When they finally, who was their Shipley was their first offensive player taken.
Yep, fourth round.
And I
fourth round
about that.
I
find little spots. I find little spots.
Shipley and Anaya Smith. Anaya Smith. These are versatile guys. These are guys that can catch the football. These are guys that, if you need them in a pinch, could be running back. I like that Smith lists himself as that dual threat on his hype tape, by the way. These are versatile guys. And I know we've gotten in this argument in the past, John, but I like every once in a while, I like it when a hitter steps up to the plate and hits a single. I would like for Jalen Hurts to embrace the single a little bit more, embrace the slap hitter every once in a while. If you have a running back that's open at the line of scrimmage and you don't want to force the ball downfield, take what the defense is giving you. Tom Brady made a nice little career out of doing that. So for me, I like the idea of having running backs / wide receivers that could be that dual threat. And there's no better example of that, obviously, than Saquon Barkley, which is why I'm thrilled that he's here. But I like when they went offense, and I love that they piled up on defense with their first 3 picks. So I really like the Eagles draft. All the national pundits that go with an A or an A+, I'm right there with them. The only thing that I really look at with let's see how that works out. And I still like the pick. It's not like I think Cooper DeJean is some hack, but interesting. Interesting.
Well,
Edgerrin Cooper was right there.
I want to see a big back like Jordan Howard. Remember Jordan Howard for
Yeah.
that little stretch, or even Jay Ajayi.
It's almost like if they
Derek
think they
Blunt.
keep bringing in these little guys, they're going to force Jalen Hurts to use them in the backfield.
Yeah, right.
I'd like to see a one-cut runner, but this is the kind of nitpicking I have to do. North-South guy. They've already had DeAndre Swift was a great receiver. You don't know it because they didn't use him. He was a great receiver in Detroit. Kenny Gainwell played receiver at times. He was so good in Memphis in college. They don't use him that way. So what makes you think they're going to use Saquon or Will Shipley any better? Now, Saquon's got much more talent, so it'll probably be a little bit better, but you get my point when it comes to always trying to get the same theme of running back. Why not mix it up? Give me a little thunder and lightning. Give me a little, give me somebody who can move the chains and do it back behind this offensive line, Mark Farzetta, which I've always wanted to see a one-cut north-south runner with this offensive line to see what he can do. But they love these guys who, he's so versatile. He can catch the football out of the backfield that we never throw. All right, great. Maybe when you get Tom Brady or a quarterback like Phillip Rivers, who Nick Sirianni loves, then you need that back. Right now, I don't know if you need that back.
Well, here's my thing. If you're a fan or even a coach, like maybe you're one of the coaches on the staff that really want Jalen Hurts to start hitting running backs, the game that really haunts me from this past season is the Seattle game. And there were two instances where a little check down, little dump down at the line of scrimmage, you win that football game.
Oh, yeah. If they were just patient, they win that game.
Yeah, that too. Yeah. Like, perfect example is you and I have talked a lot, John, about, and Zander, I know you've had this conversation as well, the situational football with the Eagles. Third down, great. But like situational mindset, good strategy football is something that still needs to be drilled into Jalen Hurts' head, maybe A.J. Brown's head. And that is, hey, if you're up 4 points in the fourth quarter and you have the ball and the other team's, 45-yard line, 1st and 10, maybe don't take that shot into the end zone.
I still say this about that Seattle game, and I'm with you. Yeah. They forced that ball. They went off the reservation. But I'll tell you what, A.J. Brown took responsibility as we're sitting here on May 3rd of 2024, I believe. I think that's the correct year.
Yes.
Jalen Hurts has never taken responsibility for that.
Oh. Yeah. Trade him.
I'm not saying that, but
I know.
People rip AJ. He's not a leader. He's the one out there taking responsibility for the mistake.
Let me put this on record real quick. All right, because I love AJ Brown.
So do I.
And watching his press conference, I'm like, how do you? It's so easy to look at a wide receiver that talks and be like, diva. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, somebody else isn't speaking up. He's the guy speaking up. He's the guy holding. He's the guy that when he did his little, speaking of rants or tirades, whatever, when he finally addressed the media and broke his silence, right, and everyone was losing their minds over A.J. Brown not talking, he just said, like, everyone here in this locker room is accountable. It's not the coaches. They're not out there being asked to make the plays. We're being asked to make the plays. We're not making the plays. Is that not exactly the mindset you want from your athlete? That it's my fault, it's not somebody else's fault. I thought that's the mindset that we love in Philadelphia. Now all of a sudden that's a diva. Like, that doesn't make sense. So yeah, put me on the record. I love AJ Brown.
Yeah, and John says it all the time. He's one of the most misunderstood athletes, John. I think you said you've ever covered, because it's easy to slap the diva tag on him, but
he's not a diva.
He's not. And John, you say I don't talk to him behind the scenes like you do, but you do say he's a great guy, both on and off the air, which is cool to hear. I will say that about Jalen Hurts, though. I don't want to change the guy from what he is, but boy, I wish he was more of a vocal leader, especially when you're 1-7 down the stretch and he's sitting on the.
I'll
get it. It's easy to analyze it from my couch and say, why is Jalen Hurts doing that? But somebody's got to do it. You're making $50 million a year. You're the quarterback of the football team. Go and light a fire under somebody's ass and get him to play.
I'll defend now. Now I'm going to defend Jalen after
Good, hit me with it.
Well, from Jalen's perspective, when he was winning 24 or 26 or whatever the hell it was, everybody was like, "Oh, it's so great. He's so he's a flat line.
Yeah,
He's so calm on the sidelines. He never gets overwhelmed. It's all great. And then when they start shitting the bed, it becomes a problem, which Jalen said. He's right. You know, he is who he is. You can't change who he is. That's
Yeah,
his
but do different
personality.
times call for different measures, John? I mean,
Well,
when
if you're a
8-1,
stoic
yeah,
guy,
don't change a thing. But when you're 1-7, maybe I got to
like
change something.
if you're an energy guy like Mark Farzetta, you're an energy guy. You're not gonna temper it down for some nut job like me. If you're more understated, you're more understated. You're not going to change your personality on a dime. Then you just look like a bipolar lunatic, really, if you think about it. I mean, you're going to act like a. I often wonder, Mark Farzetta, if Tom Brady was having some of his mashups on the sidelines in Philadelphia, where he's throwing Microsoft Surface pad. I don't want to dispute. Everybody says iPads. Poor NFL not getting their plug-in. Microsoft Surface pads. Do they still exist? When he's having those meltdowns, how would that have gone over in Philadelphia? Good if they win, bad if they lose, right?
Was he still like racking up Super Bowls and all that stuff? Was that still going on?
Probably not. Maybe 2.
Yeah.
Probably not 6. Or whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, my point is, look, emotional's great if you win. It ain't great if you lose.
Mm-hmm.
Stoicism is great if you win. It ain't great if you lose.
Oh, yeah.
Same conversation with AJ Brown, though.
I really admire stoicism. And I at times personally, I mean, I know you guys were talking about like my energy and all stuff. Like I at times I have to do an impression of somebody who is stoic.
Energy. Yeah, so does Brandon.
Yeah,
Brandon admits that. Oh, I thought you're going the energy route. Brandon, BG will say, "Hey, sometimes I gotta manufacture this bullshit."
Yeah, well, yeah, but everyone, when everything is setting itself on fire, like at the end of the season, for instance, I think some people, their brand of leadership or their style of leadership is probably the better way to say it, is I'm still going to be the guy that says everything's cool. We got this. No matter, hey, we got this. And in Jalen's case, like I think in Philadelphia, Chase Utley is one of the greatest leaders we've ever seen in the sports community in Philadelphia. Other than the 3 really famous words he said, he might have said 4 other words in his entire time in Philadelphia. He led by example, but he picked his spots. Jalen Hurts, I could see being that same type of guy. And we all know this. You don't have to be an athlete to know this. Everyone knows somebody at work that's just the quiet to themselves type, puts their heads down, put their head down and just does their job. Jalen Hurts, you can be that to an extent, but you have to pick your spots. But the moment that person steps out of character is the moment that person's pushed aside. Because it's like, well, dude, you're just doing this because you feel like you have to. This isn't genuine. And that really, really loses its gusto. And I love the idea of Jalen Hurts still speaking, but when it's called for, not forcing the issue. The other guys are already the vocal leaders in that locker room. AJ Brown is already a vocal leader in that locker room. I get that. Brandon Graham, still a vocal leader, even though he does skew to the side of optimism, and it's all good. But for me, I think Jalen Hurts doesn't have to force it, but there has to be situations there where he does have to take the responsibility of not rah, flip a table over, smash a Surface tablet, whatever, but just pick his spots if things start to go awry or they're not practicing right, things aren't looking good, to make sure that he gets those guys focused.
And that's the old adage for quarterbacks is it's, when you're successful, it's we. And when you're not, it's me. And that's why I bring up Seattle. He should have been the first one saying, you know what? Don't blame Nick Sirianni. Don't blame Brian Johnson. Don't blame AJ Brown. Blame me. I made a mistake. I made a bad read. I made an underthrow. I threw it in the double coverage. That's where I think would hold some water more, that old adage. Whereas AJ was the one who had to step up and protect the coaches. And because Nick, by the way, showed leadership. He was like, remember that convoluted explanation? It was the dumbest thing ever. And AJ even said, this guy looked like a fool for us. He said that about Nick. Yeah. He was like, he looked like a fool for us.
Yeah. And yet AJ's the diva.
Yeah.
Well, here's where I'll disagree though on Jalen Hurts, and I agree. I don't want him to not be himself, and I do think there will be some disingenuous if he does that. But I think not being different than you are, but expanding who you are to match the moment is part of playing with that contract.
I think that's fair.
A rookie quarterback that's coming into the league anymore. A second-round pick, slightly understated. If the time calls where you're the $55 million quarterback and you got to step up to get your team out of a 1-7 rut, or get prepared to go play Tampa in the playoffs, expand, be bigger, be better, approach that moment in a growth mindset versus this is what I am. I'm not going to be anything I'm not. If what you are isn't working in that moment, you got the contract, expand, be bigger, be better.
I agree. I think that's a good way to put it. The example that I bring up is, and this is after Jalen Hurts was asked about expanding the role or being more of a leader. Do you feel like you have to change and all that stuff? The one example I'll bring up is Quez Watkins getting that start last year. And it was the game that Devontae Smith missed after he hurt his ankle, I think it was. And he texted Quez Watkins and said, hey, be ready. And my only thing is, and this is nitpicking 100%, but if I have to look at one example of maybe one thing that's different, maybe instead of the text message, instead of Quez Watkins putting it out to the media, Jalen texted me. Maybe Jalen came up to me out on the practice field and really talked me up and really told me how much this team needs me and I'm going to be ready to go. And maybe it's a little bit more of a personal connection. I understand, John. I think your take on it was it's what they do. They text nowadays, but I think maybe that's the next step.
They probably,
look in the eye.
Would say Quez's locker was a good 25 feet away from Jalen's locker, so that's a long way to go, Mark.
Good Lord.
That's a long way.
Where
you
could
just pick up the phone and say, hey, be ready. I can't walk 25 feet and say, be ready. I might do that to Ed Kratz today as we're going down there. I'm going to see him, but I might text him.
Put your arm around him. Be like, hey, Kratz, we're going to need you to step up a little bit today, okay?
Yeah.
We need you to step up.
I don't want to say it face to face. Come on, that's awkward.
Oh, God. Oh, good times.
Farzy, rookie camp coming up. Who you most excited to see or to learn a little bit more about from the Eagles draft class?
Will Shipley is the guy that I'm looking at the most. Versatility, catching, overall work ethic. I really like the little factoid that Howie Roseman dropped in there about how he got a 4.0 in school simply because in class he also wanted to kick people's ass. So I like that competitive edge about him.
He had the best introductory press conference ever. Will Shipley. I've been doing this for 25 stinking years. Nobody's ever been more impressed.
Wait, was that on the Zoom or was that it? Yeah. Okay, I haven't seen his yet. I got to check his out. But
I was ready to rip the pick on our draft show, and Johnny Mack comes on and is like, "That was the most impressive press conference I've ever had."
I've never been more impressed by a young man in my life.
Yeah. Fair enough. And then of course, Red Star, right? And then of course, your corners, but I don't know how much you're really going to be able to tell from that. But yeah. I'm Will Shipley.
15 minutes, so we're not going to be able to tell anything. But
I don't. It's tough in this situation. I want to see how hard Nick Sirianni coaches these guys. I don't know. It's going to be Camp Hard Ass this year.
I want to see John Ross run a 4.22 if that's possible.
John Ross Watkins.
Wow. Wait, John Ross is going to be at rookie camp?
Yeah. Tryout player.
Okay, all right, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Wow, he went from retirement to rookie camp. That's ass backwards. Ass backwards.
Yeah. They're bringing in Jakeem Grant as well. If you remember him, he was a good kick returner. Had about 5-6 kickoff returns. They're bringing him in for a tryout as well. So that's good stuff. At Mark Farzetta, make sure you follow Mark on X, Twitter, the Farzy Show. Everywhere, Twitch, Twitter, Facebook Live. How many other? JAKIB Media, JAKIB YouTube page.
Everything.
How many platforms?
Everything. Everything,
Zander
man.
told me Birds 365 has 1 million. I don't know if this is good, but it sounds like a lot to me.
It's good.
1 million podcast downloads. We crossed 1 million.
Holy!
I give all the credit to the appearances of Mark Farzetta.
Well, yeah. I mean, rightfully so. I mean, if we're talking about divas, I mean, who is the diva involved in JAKIB Media? That'd be me, obviously.
That's true.
No, congratulations. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yes,
I think it's awesome. I don't know.
It is. It
I'm
is,
not-
Johnny Mac.
yeah.
By every metric, that's a good number to have, especially for podcasts, which works different than YouTube than it does over there. So good stuff. We appreciate everybody in the chat box. I even see big cells in the chat box. So drop us a like in the chat to help us reach 2 million podcast downloads. So, Mark, good stuff. Thanks for joining today. Thanks for bringing the espresso energy. I was a little surprised by your comeback to John Sixers rant. I thought you were gonna.
Yeah, I was
If-
expecting you to rip me.
I could go an hour. All right. I know your audience is
And
here.
you
for
already
that
did it
call.
this morning on the Farsi show.
Yeah. All right. Here's all I'll say. All right. To close on the Sixers. Last year I wasn't pushing Joel Embiid out the door. This year I'm not pushing Joel Embiid out the door. I took calls last year. I'm going to make calls this year if I'm Daryl Morey and see what I can get in return for Joel Embiid. I love the player. I love how he played in this series with the exception of the fourth quarter in game 4 because that was terrible. But he did gut it out. I can't call him soft. The guy played on one leg, Bell's palsy and all that stuff. I absolutely love the player. I wish he was here for 5 years playing for MVP awards and championships and all that. But
I'm done with Joel Embiid.
All right. I like inching off the protection at all costs. Too many people do that.
Yeah.
Great player. I have never criticized the talent, but he has to understand there are moments where he can't be the guy. You said close it on the Sixers. That's the problem. They don't have a closer. They need to find a closer. Hopefully that's Tyrese Maxey, but we don't know. We saw it in game 5, but that was desperation. He's got to be in the Jalen Brunson role of creating everything in the waning minutes of a game.
I'm with you there. I'm with you there. And yesterday, look, he was not great yesterday.
No, he did
he had
not
10,
play well.
But he had 10 points in the fourth quarter. So
the Knicks did a good job adjusting. They ran at him. They tried to get the ball out of his hands. They did a good job.
But the first quarter, he had a wide open look, and I think he airballed it. It was an airball or bottom of the backboard, which is kind of more embarrassing. But still need more from him, especially in the early goings. It can't be 28. It can't be Knicks 28, Joel Embiid 9, and that's the only guy scoring for the Sixers.
That was a brutal start. I'm surprised they even came back and got back in the game.
By the way,
then they got a 10-point lead and they blew it.
Nick Nurse's line. No, you know what? And I made this analogy on the show this morning. I said, you know what? And I hate to go there with people, but Jalen Hurts fumbling and spotting the Chiefs 7 points in the Super Bowl. That's what I was reminded of last night. For whatever awful reason, that's where my mind went when the Sixers were trailing by 22 points in the first quarter. I'm like, even if they make a run, this is still a horrible way to start this basketball game. And you're playing makeup. You're playing makeup throughout the rest of the game. So it was pretty terrible. But thanks for bringing that one back. Yeah, good time.
That fumble arguably cost
I'm gonna have more fun. I'm gonna have more fun finishing the half pile of mulch that is still in my driveway than I am talking about the Sixers for the next 5 months.
It is mulch season. Rookie camp season, mulch season.
Yeah, man.
You got to
Good
get
time.
to it.
I laid down the tarp.
How is the floating shelf working out?
Still standing, still attached to the wall.
Floating. That's all that matters.
Still floating, baby. Holding the sound bar all nice. Oh, it's beautiful.
Nice.
Yeah, man.
If the Joel Embiid hill is here, I'm all the way over there. I'm as far away from the Joel Embiid hill as I can be at this point.
I'm
Mark,
trying
thanks
to
for
figure
joining
out
the
how
show.
a floating shelf works. That's all I'm working.
I'll send you another picture, John.
All right, Barnes. Thank you, man. We appreciate it.
Hey, John, at rookie camp, don't forget, I didn't do the suntan lotion on the head yesterday, so little red up here. Don't forget.
Hat's going on.
All right,
Good for you. Look, you get a little tan going on, a little Italian tan.
Little bronze, little bronze. You know what I'm saying?
There you go, brother. All right, man. Thank you so much for joining.
See you guys. Have a great weekend.
Thanks, Mark.
There's Mark Farzetta joining us. Always great work and streams his show every morning at the start. JAKIB Sports off. One of the best shows. I love Farzi's show. Great hour of content. So make sure you tune into that and follow him on all of his Twitter and social media platforms. We'll come back and we'll put a wrap on Birds 360. Wow, running out of time here, Johnny Mac. We went a little over with Farzy, but we'll come back and we'll put a wrap on the show, and we'll get your final thoughts going into rookie camp. The first time the rookies will be shown at the Eagles facility to all. So we'll see how that goes, and we'll get Johnny Mac's thoughts on that to close out this Friday edition, this week edition of Birds 365.
Field of life, First Trust Bank is there for you.
Champions on 3. 1, 2, 3.
Because Philadelphia dreams deserve a Philadelphia bank.
Heading down the shore. Have a ball once more.
Here, imaginations run wild and time stands still. Because here, you can find the best of the Jersey Shore, all on one 5-mile island. So leave the old you behind and get lost in the woods.
Wild, wild, wildwood days.
Plan your stay in the Wildwoods today.
Hi, I'm Jim Muehlbronner, Managing Partner at Del Valle Insurance Group. Give us a call. We're a local, knowledgeable agency, not an 800 number. Go Birds!
The greatest fans on earth. It's a bold statement, but would you expect anything less from Philadelphia? 58 years of heartache creates a toughness, a grit, a resolve not found in most. Sure, our prayers were answered, but now that we've had a taste, we're looking for more. Pondley Hockey, official partner of the Philadelphia Eagles.
EAGLES, Eagles.
Back here wrapping up a Friday edition of Birds 365 with John McMullen. I'm Zander Krause. Thanks, everybody, for your viewership all week long. You guys have been tremendous, as always. We appreciate everybody in the chat box. Daz and Slager and Crawley and even Big Sills contributed. John, any final thoughts as you get ready to head down to NovaCare Complex to see the Eagles rookies? Anything our loyal viewers should be looking out for? I know, even if it's not much, what should they be looking for?
It's number day, man. I already told you it's number day.
I love that. I know Johnny Mac doesn't love the numbers.
No, I don't care. I don't give a rat's ass about numbers, but a lot of people do. So you get to see those, get our first looks at the rookies. It's always exciting to get back on the field. Even though it's light work and start of off-season work on the field, which is always a pretty cool day. But you'll see those rosters getting tweeted out pretty quickly with tryout players and all the new numbers. So everybody stay tuned.
Stay tuned for that. As Johnny Mac mentioned, we'll be back here on Birds 365 on Monday, where John will be able to recap what he saw, what he learned about these new rookies. And
speaking of, the Eagles just broke it out a little bit early. Quinyon Mitchell, 30. Cooper DeJean, 33. Chalix Hunt, 58. Will Shipley, 39. Smith 82, Trotter 54, Keegan 79, Wilson 89, McMahon 63. Exciting.
63 for McMahon. So he goes one place after Kelsey in the draft, and now he goes one number up on Kelsey. Wow.
Yeah, and Trot gets his 54. So
that's the only jersey worth buying until we figure out what Quignon and Cooper do, because I don't think Cooper's staying at 33, but we'll see.
We shall see.
We shall see. We'll see you on Monday, and we'll talk about it on Monday on Birds 365. Again, I want to thank everybody for tuning in. Make sure you hit the like button on your way out. It's the number one thing you can do to help us grow. Stay tuned. Coming up later today, 2 o'clock, 2 to 6 Eastern. Big Sills, what will Dan say today? We will learn that at 2 o'clock. So stay tuned, everybody, on JAKIB Sports. We appreciate your viewership. And as always, Johnny Mac, I'll talk to you on Monday.
All right. Have a good weekend.
Have a good weekend, everybody. See you Monday.
You've been listening to Birds 365, the destination for the passionate Eagles football fan who bleeds green. If it's Eagles football, we're talking about it. Debate inside the locker room and guests that are some of the greatest football minds from around the region. We hope you enjoyed the show. We know we had a blast. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll be back soon. But in the meantime, hook up with us on social media at JAKIB Sports. See you next time on Birds 365.